Okay, so have you ever thought about how a country can just double in size almost overnight? Well, that's exactly what happened in the United States back in the 19th century. It's this incredible story of a nation suddenly seeing its future stretching from one ocean all the way to another. But the big question we're going to dig into is, was this amazing growth a story of progress, or was it something else entirely?
Right, so let's just put the central question right out there on the table, because it frames everything we're about to talk about. How justifiable was U.S. expansion in the 1800s? We're going to walk through the key moments, the powerful ideas behind it all, and what it led to, so you can really start to think through that question for yourself.
So to even begin to answer that, we have to look at this map. This is the United States in the early 1800s. And as you can see, it's just a fraction of the size it is today, right? Its hard western border was the Mississippi River, and everything you see past that, that was foreign land, controlled by countries like France and Spain. But that was all about to change, and it was because of this powerful idea that was just taking hold of the entire nation.
And that big idea? It eventually got a name that was officially coined in 1845, but it really just described this feeling, this ambition, that had been building for decades. It was a belief in an obvious fate.
And that name was Manifest Destiny. Now, this wasn't just some government policy written down on paper. No, this was a powerful nationwide belief. It was this deeply held conviction that the United States was destined, like divinely destined, to stretch its borders from the Atlantic all the way to the Pacific.
The guy who actually put this feeling into words was a journalist named John O'Sullivan. See, back in 1845, he wrote that it was America's obvious fate, or its manifest destiny, to expand. Now, he didn't invent the idea, not at all, but man, he captured the entire spirit of the age in that one powerful phrase.
So what was really at the heart of Manifest Destiny? Well, you can think of it as this potent mix of religious belief and intense national pride. A lot of Americans genuinely believed they were on a mission from God. It was their job, their sacred duty to spread democracy and liberty across the continent. So in their minds, this wasn't just a land grab, it was fulfilling a plan. Of course, this whole way of thinking completely ignored the hundreds of thousands of Native Americans and other people who were already living on those lands.
So let's see how this idea actually played out. We're going to start with a deal that happened way before O'Sullivan even coined the term Manifest Destiny, but it totally embodies the spirit of it. This is the wild story of the Louisiana Purchase.
Okay, let's go back to our map here. See these mountains? The Appalachians. Now, for the American farmers living on the other side of them, this huge river, the Mississippi, was everything. It was their economic lifeline. It was pretty much the only way to get their crops to market. But there was a giant problem. The port of New Orleans, right down here at the mouth of the river, was controlled by France.
Now, at the same time, let's jump across the Atlantic to Europe. You've got France's leader, the super ambitious Napoleon Bonaparte, and he is busy trying to conquer, well, all of Europe. And let me tell you, that kind of thing is incredibly expensive. He was getting desperate for cash to keep his massive armies funded.
So, the Americans send a couple of guys over to Paris. Their mission, try to buy the city of New Orleans. That's it. They were authorized to spend up to $10 million for just that one port. But when they get there, Napoleon's minister hits them with an offer that must have just blown their minds. He basically says, sure, you can have New Orleans. In fact, how about you take the whole thing? The entire Louisiana territory, from the Mississippi River all the way to the Rocky Mountains, for just $15 million.
And just to put that into perspective, this deal was for about 2 to 3 cents an acre. Cents! In a flash, with the stroke of a pen on April 30th, 1803, the United States literally doubled in size. It's hands down one of the greatest land deals in all of history.
Okay, so the Louisiana Purchase was about jumping on a totally unexpected opportunity. But our next story, how the U.S. got Florida, is a whole different ballgame. This one shows another side of expansion, one where diplomacy was, let's say, backed up by some raw, unauthorized military force.
All right, so now let's shift our focus on the map down to the south. You see Georgia here, and right below it you have Florida, which was controlled by Spain at the time. And for the United States, it was just a constant problem. You had Seminole Indians from Florida raiding into Georgia, and maybe even more importantly, you had enslaved people from the south escaping to Florida for freedom. The U.S. government saw Spain's loose grip on the territory as a direct threat.
So, things heated up really fast. In 1818, this fiery general, Andrew Jackson, gets sent to the border just to stop the raids. But Jackson, well, he had his own ideas. He marches his troops right into Florida without any official orders, captures Spanish forts, and just kicks the Spanish governor out. This sparks this huge international crisis, which President Monroe's team then uses to send a very blunt message to Spain: govern or get out.
So you see what happened here. It's really a classic 1-2 punch of brute force and clever politics. You've got Andrew Jackson on the ground going rogue and creating total chaos. And then, back in Washington, you have the brilliant Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, using that very chaos as leverage to diplomatically force Spain to give in.
The deal finally got done in 1819. The U.S. officially gets Florida. In return, it agrees to pay $5 million, but get this, not to Spain. They paid it to American settlers to cover legal claims they had against the Spanish government. And as a little bonus, Spain also gave up its claim to the Oregon Country, way up in the Pacific Northwest.
All right, let's step back for a second and just look at the big picture here. In a little over 15 years, from 1803 to 1819, the United States completely changed its shape, its size, and its entire future.
I mean, just look at the map again. In less than 2 decades, the U.S. went from being a relatively small nation huddled on the coast to a real continental powerhouse. The westward push had begun, and there was absolutely no turning back now.
The results were just huge. The country's land area literally doubled. They locked down control of the Mississippi River in New Orleans, a massive win for the economy, and maybe most importantly, a powerful precedent was set. The U.S. could and would get new land through bargains, through pressure, and if necessary, through force. This mindset would lead directly to getting Texas and the Mexican-American War in the next few decades.
Which, of course, brings us right back to where we started. We've seen how the U.S. grew, through a shocking deal and through a calculated use of force. We've seen the powerful belief that was driving it all. So, now that we have all this context, how do we answer our big question? How justifiable was it?
Think about it. Was the dream of a nation that stretched from sea to shining sea, this idea of manifest destiny, worth the price? A price that included wars, the displacement of hundreds of thousands of native peoples, and the deep injustices that came along with it. That's not just a history question. It's a fundamental question about America that honestly, we are all still grappling with today.